The highly anticipated university debate at Hawthorne University was about to start. Professor Malcolm Grayson, a liberal debater known for leaving no stone unturned in debates, was confident he would easily take away Barron Trump. He saw the young Trump as an inexperienced and privileged opponent. "Your father is well known for his controversial statements. Are you willing to denounce everything he stood for right now?" was Professor Grayson's best question to Corner Barron, or so he thought. However, as the debate unfolded, Barron remained confident. With a single unexpected question, he completely changed the debate in his favor, catching Professor Grayson off guard and leaving everyone shocked. The audience quickly realized this wasn't going to be the easy victory they had anticipated. It was the beginning of the fall semester, and the directors of Hawthorne University, popularly known as the People's School, had to plan their annual political debate. Apart from being one of the best institutes for learning, they were also well known for their political debates. It was a debate that happened annually, that most of its students who got into it used it as a stepping stone in their political career if they ever chose to go into politics. They occasionally invited prominent personalities to participate in the debates, and that always got the attention of the press. Sometimes the guests lost, and other times they won. But whichever way the debate went, it either helped a ruling party already in power or gave an underdog the chance to stand toe-to-toe with prominent figures. This year, things weren't going to be different. They made their plans. Committees were created to handle things, and everyone had a task. All hands were on deck, and invitations were sent out to dignitaries who would like to grace the event. It was finally time to decide who would be on the podium this time, and they had to decide if it would be a student or if they had to invite a guest. After much consideration, a choice was made. Miss Deborah, one of the top lecturers on the debate committee tasked with organizing and decorating the venue for the debate, was asked to deliver the invitation letter to the candidate picked by the committee. Deborah picked a Friday to deliver the letter. She also had other plans that didn't involve going to work, so she visited the candidate. She stopped at the gate of a mansion she never believed was in such an area. "Good day, sir," Deborah said as she rolled down the window of her Dodge Charger. "Good day, ma'am. Do you have an appointment, or would you like to see someone in particular?" The security responded to Deborah's greeting as he exited the security house and moved closer to Deborah's car to assess whether she was a threat. "I'm from Hawthorne University, and we called in days ago about coming to deliver a letter. If you could please check your call record, that should clarify why I am here," Deborah said with a smile. The guard checked her car to be sure she was alone before going back in to check the call records for appointments from Hawthorne University. After seeing it, he returned and issued Deborah a visitor tag before opening the gate for her to drive in. She drove in and was directed by another security guard to where to park her car. Another showed her inside the house, and the maids directed her to one of the living rooms where she could sit and wait. Finally, it was time to meet him and hand over the invitation letter. As she entered the brightly lit study, she could see books everywhere, some on the floor and others well arranged on shelves in alphabetical order. She didn't expect someone like him to have such an organized study and not even talk about using it. She had heard the rumors about how smart, collected, and brilliant he was, but she had no idea he went out of his way most times just to be so well groomed educationally. As her eyes were checking out the study room, they caught a figure behind a desk who looked like he was reading or sorting the books. "He must be the one in charge of the study. I need to hand over this letter and leave. I have seen enough luxury for one day," Deborah thought as she walked toward the figure. From behind the desk came a familiar voice before he raised his head to meet her. "Good afternoon, Deborah. Welcome to my study. I'm so sorry I couldn't meet you in the living room. I got stuck here trying to clear up the mess I made while reading," the voice said with such gentility and confidence that she wondered if he was allowed to be so nice. He stood up and walked up to her, guiding her to a sofa in the study where she could sit with his hand. When Hawthorne University announced that this particular debate would feature a prominent figure for the political debates, no one expected it would be Barron Trump, the youngest son of Donald and Melania Trump, world business tycoons, of all persons who would be picked. At age 23, Barron was known to have won about 5 political debates because he had a sharp mind with an air of confidence surrounding him. Deborah was awestruck and had to collect herself before explaining to Barron why she was there and handing him the letter. Barron read the letter and turned down the invitation as he didn't want to participate this time. He thanked Deborah for the invite, but told her he would probably come around for the event some other time and even be one of the debaters. Deborah insisted and told Barron she was sure it would be worth his time. One of the school's professors was eagerly looking forward to this debate, and he lobbied to be Barron's opponent. Deborah told Barron that his opponent, Professor Malcolm Grayson, was one of the university's most outspoken liberal voices, who, having heard that Barron would be invited to be among the debaters, could not resist the chance to face off against Barron, so he lobbied to be the one who would face off against Barron. Grayson was well known in the school as a political debater who went all out to dismantle his opponents with brutal precision. He also boasted and promised his students and colleagues that he would expose the myth of the Trump legacy. This got Barron's attention, and he agreed to participate in the debate. Deborah thanked him with so much joy and stood up to leave. She got to the door and told Barron that his opponent was not going to rest until his victory was sure, so Barron shouldn't rest either. Barron laughed and thanked her for the advice before she left. Barron stared at the invite in his hands and knew he had to prepare just like Deborah had told him. He had heard of Professor Grayson and how he went all out in political debates. He even watched one such debate in which Grayson left his opponent standing there without a word to return from the beginning of the debate until the very last minute. Grayson was not someone to take lightly, and Barron decided to do his best not to be caught lagging at the debate. Barron had vast knowledge, but there was no way he could win Grayson with the little he knew. He had a month to prepare for the debate and called for help. "Hi, Dad. I need your help," Barron said as he held his phone close to his ear. His cavalry was his dad. He knew his dad had been in many political debates and would be able to help him figure out what to study and prepare. "Son, what is it?" "It has been a while since you asked for my help," Donald Trump said from the other end of the phone. "I got invited to participate in a political debate, and you are the only one who can help me win this debate," Barron told his dad with all certainty. Donald laughed and told Barron it was a simple matter. He told Barron to first research his opponent and know all about him, including details he didn't want anyone to know about. That would come in handy if they ever came to a pinch and couldn't go further. Donald also told Barron he would send him possible sectors he should study. Barron was so happy and told his dad he would do his best because he knew his dad was in support. Donald left the call by asking who Barron's opponent was and told Barron he would send him details and everything else he might need. He was grateful to his dad for making his research job easier, so he hung up the call and headed to his bedroom to sleep before preparations began in earnest. He woke up to his alarm, cleaned up, and headed straight to the study, where all the mess he had made had been cleaned up. All that was on his desk was his new task, political debate. All he needed to know was already on his table, and all he had to do was dive in. With his cup of coffee in hand, he went to the table and started preparing. To prepare for his political debate, just like his dad had sent in the files, he knew that the economy and jobs were frequently discussed, focusing on tax policies, employment rates, and the cost of living. Healthcare was another major issue, including access to affordable care, public versus private systems, and mental health services. He went into education debates that often covered public school funding, student loan debt, and equitable access to quality education. This was a lot. It was more than he bargained for, but he had to show that he was up to the task. He may have won about 5 in the past, but what he knew then wouldn't beat Grayson, and those people he won were within his age bracket, not Grayson's. Grayson was far ahead of him, and he had to bridge the gap between them so he could stand a chance of winning. After covering those parts and taking notes of every important detail, he reviewed them repeatedly until he knew them like the back of his hand. After that, he studied immigration policies, climate and environmental issues, foreign policy and national security, social issues, law and justice, and the government and democracy. He had the fort entirely held down. He wasn't going to lose. His confidence shot up, and he knew he had covered more than enough. He called his dad and appreciated him once again for helping out. One evening, when he returned from a business trip, his dad decided to have a mock debate to prepare Barron for the main event. His mom was the judge for the night, and with that, they began. Barron was surprised at the kind of knowledge his dad had. Despite being busy most of the time, he still had time to read and follow up on many topics. The mock debate ended with Barron losing to his dad, and he was happy because he knew how fierce his dad could be in debate. He watched as his dad tore up prominent politicians in political debates, despite being a businessman. His mom told him not to worry. They would support him all the way. His dad encouraged him to do his best and do his thing. Barron didn't stop preparing even after the encouragement he got from his dad and mom. He knew his family's name would be overlooked, and his knowledge was all that mattered, so he spent time reading more than necessary until he had his fill and knew he was ready for the debate. The hall for the debate was filled to the brim with students, faculty, professors, and media outlets eager to witness the confrontation between Barron and Professor Grayson. It was the most talked about event in the online space, and prominent political figures flew in to witness it. Professor Grayson went online to tell the world that he would expose the myth behind the Trump legacy, the same thing he had told his students and colleagues. When Barron arrived, he entered the hall with his security detail holding nothing. Everyone in the hall was surprised. People who had faced off with Professor Grayson had notes in their hands, all prepared to challenge Grayson, but Barron came empty-handed. Grayson laughed and whispered to his colleagues that Barron was a fool to think he could beat him without his notes. It was finally time for the debate to start after all the important dignitaries had been introduced. Grayson and Barron were given seats facing the crowd. Grayson leaned back in his chair with a devious smile. When the go-ahead was given for them to start, Grayson asked that he be allowed to go first. Just like Barron prepared, they started with topics focusing on tax policies, employment rates, the cost of living, healthcare, public school funding, student loan debt, equitable access to quality education, immigration policies, climate and environmental issues, foreign policy, national security, social issues, law and justice, and, lastly, the government and democracy. Every aspect the professor brought Barron showed him he was equal to the task, and he followed him up with his barrage of questions. It was a heated debate. The professor had belittled Barron too early, but he was not going to allow someone as small as Barron to beat him. After the first 3 hours of a heated debate, they were given a 30-minute break, which they all went to prepare themselves. During the break, Barron tried calling his parents to inform them of how the debate was going, but to no avail. He gave up and asked to see Miss Deborah,
the lady who delivered the invite. When Barron saw her, he thanked her for the advice, and Barron hinted to her that most people misunderstood his kind of person and did not expect him to have a say in his own life or thoughts, and that would be the reason he would win the debate. They talked for a few minutes before his phone rang. It was his dad, and he could hear his mom's voice in the background. They greeted each other, and his dad told him he was doing a great job. He also apologized for missing his debate, which got the entire country talking. He smiled and appreciated the support. When his dad hung up, Barron began re-strategizing because he knew the debate would end in a stalemate if he allowed the professor to keep at him this way. On the other hand, Grayson was furious in his office because he didn't expect the rumors about Barron being smart to be true. He needed to end this debate as fast as possible to avoid them getting into a stalemate, which would spoil his record of 17 consecutive wins. If anyone should break his record, it should not be Barron. Barron was too small to have him cornered, or so he thought. Break time was up, and everyone returned to see who would emerge victorious between Barron and Professor Grayson. As Barron walked in, the air around him had changed. His smile showed more confidence than when the debate started. Just as he got to the podium, the Master of Ceremonies announced the arrival of Donald and Melania Trump. Barron thought they were messing with him, but it was not until his mom walked up to him and hugged him. She whispered in his ear that they wanted to be there to support him in person. Professor Grayson smiled mischievously. This was his time to not just win the debate, but also shame Barron in front of his parents and the Trump family before the entire nation. The debate resumed with Professor Grayson taking the first shot at Barron. "Tell me, Barron," he began, "do you believe that your family's policies help anyone at all, especially the common man, because these policies, according to your father, are supposed to be the beginning of change? Or is that just the story you and other members of your family tell yourselves at dinner?" Before responding to the professor, Barron kept quiet for a while, as if in thought. "I believe change goes beyond words. It is about taking action, and from what I have seen my mom and dad do, yes, I do not just believe, but I know that my family's policies help even the common man. Just like my father said, it is the beginning of change," Barron said. Barron knew that the professor was trying to corner him, and he was well prepared for that, because unlike his dad, the professor was less aggressive. Although Barron could tell that the professor was trying to live up to his reputation and not be beaten by him, he wasn't going to go down easy. The debate continued with both of them at each other's throats, none willing to give up. The crowd shifted uncomfortably as it became clear Barron was no easy target. The easy defeat Professor Grayson had spoken about was nowhere in sight. Professor Grayson could feel the heat of the debate all around him. He thought about how to corner Barron and decided it was time to play his trump card. To the professor, playing this card would most definitely corner Barron, thereby making him victorious. "Your father is well known for his controversial statements," Professor Grayson said, standing up from his seat and taking a few steps as if he was in thought before finishing his question. "Are you willing to denounce everything he stood for right now?" The hall went from being filled with little chatters here and there about how the debate was going to dead silence in seconds as they heard the professor's question. It was just like Barron had predicted. The professor didn't expect him to have a say over his own life, because he was Barron Trump's son. Not just the professor, but a whole other group of people in the hall felt he had to always do as his father told him, just like other kids from wealthy families like his. Barron took a deep breath and turned to look at his mom and dad. His dad nodded his head as if to permit him. Barron smiled. His face glowed with excitement. "I don't need to defend or denounce anyone," he started. "My beliefs are my own. My thoughts are my own. My actions are my own. If you are asking to know if I blindly follow my father's views, thoughts, or actions, then the answer is no. But if you are asking me so you could know if I respect him, then the answer is yes." The silence in the hall started to fade away as the audience began to murmur. Nobody expected Barron to reply so honestly, especially with his parents in the hall. His parents, on the other hand, had smiles on their faces. They had always taught their son to be himself, and his thoughts and actions were his to do with as he saw fit. Barron was living up to the rumors about him, and was gaining more attention than usual. The professor, on the other hand, was displeased, and knew he had to act before Barron came for him. Just before the professor could act, Barron turned the tables on him. In his research, Barron stumbled upon a piece of information that he felt might be useful, and this was the right time for it to bear fruit. "Professor Grayson," he said, his voice steady and full of confidence, "you have spoken about fairness since this debate began. But is it not true that your research department receives funding from a corporate donor, and you also oppose the policies of this donor?" Professor Grayson's expression changed. "What are you implying with your question?" he asked. Barron continued without giving the professor time to counter. "I'm implying that it's easy for you to criticize from a podium, but real integrity means that you have to hold yourself accountable too, because your corporate donor is also one of my family's businesses." The hall went silent again after hearing Barron's words. Professor Grayson opened his mouth to respond, but couldn't find the words. He knew he was done for this, and there was no return. Seeing that the professor had nothing to say in his defense, the debate moderator declared the session over and Barron the winner. The audience applauded and cheered while standing. Nobody saw that coming. This would be the most talked about event for a while. Barron walked up to his mom and dad, who had their arms wide open, waiting for him to enter their embrace. Truly, Barron was just like his father, a force to be reckoned with. They left the hall and returned home where they had dinner, and spent the rest of the evening discussing the debate. Barron again thanked his dad for his help, and went to his room to sleep. It had been a long day, he told himself, as he jumped on the bed to sleep.
What are your thoughts on how Barron gave Professor Grayson a taste of his own medicine? It was a smart move, right? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this video was inspiring, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen. See you next time.